Hello fellow Irix software and 3D graphics application enthusiasts, and welcome to another old Irix tutorials. Today we're going to be going into Houdini 6.5. The last video that I created, the first video that I created for Houdini was in version 5.5. Today we're going to use 6.5. There are a couple new features, and I figured we'd go over the new area light, because in the last video you saw me light with a spotlight using soft shadows, and this time we can just use an area light outright. It's a new feature by the time we get to 6.5. And I will also show you some short modeling, a little model work to change the shape of some grids so that we can create collision items for a particle simulation. And I'll show you how to set up a pop network from scratch in order to get particles to collide with geometry. Okay, to start, we want to open a shell here, and I wanted to go over a quick item, which is the fact that there are two versions of Houdini 6.5 still available on the web, and they are 6.5.51 and 6.5.67, and the 6.5.51 version crashes if you try to load or save scenes. You can open it, you can build a scene, you can render, you can do a lot of things in it, but as soon as you try to load or save the scene, it will crash out. So I'd say skip this one completely unless you are very curious about it as its own version. But it doesn't seem any different than the 6.5.67. The 6.5.67 version is capable of loading and saving, and so we'll just use that one from here. And like the last video, I'm starting the video showing you how to load it up. I'm going to go into the drive. Like, it creates this, you get a zip file and you unzip it, and then you end up with a directory with all these files here, and or you like a gun zip file, and then you get this a tar file, and then you open everything up and you get all these files. Then in that folder there is a Houdini setup that you have to run. You have to source in order to set up the Houdini environment. I'll do that here. I select everything with a middle, drag across the directory here, go to a terminal, press CD space, hit middle mouse button to copy it over. So I'm changing directory to this folder, and then I'm going to do the source space, and then I'm going to type HOUD and then hit tab, so it auto finishes _S tab, so we can get source Houdini _setup. Hit enter, sets up the Houdini 6.567 environment has been initialized, and so now all the environment variables and all the commands that are in the bin folders will run from basically anywhere, and so the software will run correctly. Then I have to run the license server. I'll do SESINETD, that runs the license server. Mine just runs. If you don't have a license when you run Houdini, it'll bring up the window and ask you to, enter a license chain. And so there's this computer has these licenses, and although they would expire, it seems all the licenses expired in 2012. So in order to show you this demo, I ran the date back to before 2012 so we can run the software and make this video. All right, once that's done, we'll do H master and run the software. And here we go. Okay, once we're inside Houdini, it opens up just like the other one, where you, over here in the node view, there's some items, 3 lights, an ambient light, a camera, and just a geometry. It says model. Ignore all that, and I'm going to just go up to File, New, and then just discard a new, and it gets rid of everything. Now, if you're running Houdini, you're probably not going to have these 3 items here. There's one on the right of the main view, there's one on the left, and there's one down here, and they usually look like this. So you see this little line here, and then there's a little highlight line here. You can click that, that closes. Up here at the top there's this little highlighting line. You can click that, it closes. Click this, it closes over here on the right. Now this is usually how it opens, so I wanted to show you how to get into it here. So we'll go down here the whole line, the top one, click it, you'll see this row of icons here with no camera in the middle. Go over on the left, highlight the inner line, click it, and you see these right here. These are all selection types, so you got geometry, cameras, lights, and there's even like, you know, depending on what you pick, if you have a geo, it'll say like polygons and points. And then over here on the right, this is display, and you can turn on like points, point numbers, normals. There's some data here you can turn on, and it'll make stuff on your mesh turn on, so you can see more detail or information regarding what your geometry has. To start, I'm going to also go down here on this lower row here, and there's like, let's see, from the camera it's 1, 2, 3, 4 over. There's this little thing. It says left click to toggle the construction plane, and that's the grid. And when you hit it, you'll see that the camera starts right on the. It's like flat, you know, facing down the Z. So you just see this little line here. And to move this view before you do anything, you can just use the mouse keys. So I'm going to use the left mouse click to orbit, rotate, and here's our very familiar 3D plane grid. And then if you use the middle mouse button, you have the dolly, which pushes the camera forward or backwards. It's not a zoom, it's actually moving the camera forward and backwards in the scene. And then the right click is a, no, it's not letting me get a hold of it for some reason. Oh, there we go. The right click has the pan tool, which is like the little move arrow, which lets you move left and right and up and down based on the cameras facing normal. And that's how you get around initially, but once you start selecting items or moving items or jumping in, that option disappears to just use it with the mouse, and you're going to want to press the space bar to get to it once you start selecting and creating items. Well, let's see here, and then we'll press press S for selection, which brings back our arrow, and let's get started on creating some geometry so we can test the area light out. We'll go over here, we'll tap generator, or tap tab. Over here in this view on the lower right is the node view. You press tab and you get this little quick menu up. We'll have generators, and you hold left click down to go through the menu, and just go over here to geometry. We'll drop one here. You see this generic XYZ cube. That is telling you that this is a file node. It looks like because I pressed Q, that's why the little selection came on. When you press, you got S for selection. Once you press Q and then right click, it'll bring up this little gimbal for moving the item around, just in case that shows up there. And I'm gonna press Q to turn it off. And we'll go over here to Geo. I'm gonna select the letters on the left, and we're gonna call this floor. I'll left click the item, so I have it selected, and I'll press enter to dive into it. And you see here's inside is like the information inside the node, which is like the shape node in Maya. So if you'll see here that we're in like a green now, and I'm going to show you this menu here. It's also up here on the upper left, but this menu here, it says SOPs, that's surface operators, and that's basically like the shape node in Maya, where there is the mesh and all the construction history that's attached to it. And then if we go back out here to objects, and you have this item that's just like basically the item as it would appear in the outliner, except for in this node view, and at the same time it's also the transform. So at this level we're doing animation. You can see up here you have translate, rotate, scale. There's some shading information, there's some render specific information, there's something here for rigid bodies, and some other miscellaneous display tools. We'll go back to the transform tab, and this lets you move the item around and keyframe and animate. And so this is like the transform level at the object level, and then when we dive into it, the geometry, which is the surface operator, that is the shape node, like the shape node in Maya is the equivalent. So I'm going to kill this file node, hit delete, and then I'll hit tab, and we'll go down here to primitives, and there's one called grid, and that'll create our floor plane. Now you see, I'm going to try to zoom in here, and see this item here is a plane. And what I like to do, just if you've seen in most of my tutorials here, you got over here on the right, there's a way to do it, and down here on the bottom bar, there's this little cylinder shaded. You right click it, it brings up this menu, and it's smooth shaded. Now I'm going to break it to smooth shade smooth but wire shaded, and it puts the wire on top of the smooth shade so we can see what's going on with the geometry here, and we can see that it has 10 rows and columns for its geometry, which is fine for our needs now, but this is too small, and I'm not going to jump back out and scale it in the world. I want to change the size here, so I'm going to middle mouse click up here on the size, not these numbers. I'm going to middle mouse click on the size, and we'll move it up to increments of 1 and just slide it up, and you see I get it pretty big here. Maybe take it up to like 20 is fine, and then we're good there. And then I drop out of surface operators back down to objects, and now we're back outside. Now I'm gonna hit the space bar and move around so we can zoom back out a little bit here, and we can see this is a good size floor to put something over. And then I want to create a an item to light. Now what I could do is just create like a cube or a sphere, but I do have a model of the SGI bug, and I'm going to just light that real quick. We'll put a light and a shader on that one. I'm going to press tab, hit generators, geometry again, and we'll select that and say SGI underscore bug, and I'm going to go in here, hit enter to dive into it, and here's the file, and I'm just going to point it towards a file. So I'm going to open this thing up here. Oh, it looks like it's saved from the memory from me playing around with it. Let's see if this is the best one. It looks like it's loaded it. And let's see, where is it? I can't see. Oh, it's really big in the scene here. So let's scale that down. So I'll go back out to objects, and or I could transform it. I kind of want it to be one. I'm going to do this here. I'm not going to change the scale here at the transform. I'm going to dive back into the file, and I'm going to hit the tab, and I'm going to try to manipulate it with a transform. So I'm going to modify it here inside the at the geometry level. And also I just noticed that it made the normals correct on the items, so now the normals are facing the right way, and modifying it in Houdini here is showing that put the normals the correct way just by putting a transform on it. And I'm going to take the scale, go over to the scale here. Instead of doing individual numbers, I'll scale it uniformly by middle clicking over the text scale. And let's go down in increments of 1 and see how fast. Whoa, it goes really quick. Okay, let's do 0.1 and see how. There we go. So I'll make it 0.1. And then what else do we want to do? We don't want to render it like that, although it will subdivide at render time. We're going to subdivide it one more to see if we smooth it out here using a node here. This is a simple little item I created in Maya for this test on another render, and I'm going to use it in this one here. So let's see, I'm going to hit tab, past the X form, the transform, and we're going to go, I'm going to press S and start typing, and it'll limit, because I'm looking for subdivide. And here we got subdivide. I'm going to click it down here, take the top cable and plug it into the top here, and then you saw when I had the file, it did this, and then a transform, I activate it. And if you saw my other video, you see what I'm doing here. This blue flag on the right activates the node, and so as it goes down the chain, you have to turn them on. So let's turn on the subdivide. You can see there it's starting to smooth it out, and that's pretty good. And I think that gives us an idea of what it's going to look like, and we'll subdivide it at render time using the render tab. So we'll jump out of the surface operators to objects, and in the SGI bug item, I'm going to go up here past transform into shading, and nope, over to render. And in render, I'm going to say down here a little ways, it says geometry is geometry as is. I'm going to click that and go polygons as subdivision surface. So this should subdivide at render time and give us a smoother result than this, so it smooths everything out. Alright, let's put a shader on that. I'm going to go into, I'm going to create one for the floor and one for the bug. Shiny one for the bug. Here, let's go under objects. I'm going to go down here. The fourth item in the list is shaders, and you see here it says shop. That's for shader operators, and it brings up the shader window. If you saw the first video, you recognize that this really isn't any different than the 5.5 one, other than a few options that are added. And what we're going to do is we're going to tab in here, and there's Vex standard at the bottom. This pertains to Houdini things, and I'm going to go to the Vex super material. And the first one we'll do is for the floor, so I just want to turn the specularity off. So So I'm going to click this gray, pull this all the way down to black. Hit close, it's just regular. I'm going to take the diffuse, I'm going to click this, I'm going to move it down from 0.8 to like maybe 0.65 or something, a little bit less bright. And then I'll rename that V underscore FLOOR. So that's that shader, and we need one more, so I'll tab, and since we've used a Vex Supermaterial before, it adds it in the recently used list, so I can just click that again, and this will be our SGI underscore bug underscore blue, and we'll make this one partially reflective, so I'll click this up and we'll make it like 0.5 reflection, or maybe a little bit more. Yeah, kind of bright. 6.65. And then the specularity, how do we do it here? We want, I like the specular level, but we'll do specularity roughness is 0.05. I'm going to do it 0.001. Oops. Turn on the numlock here. 0.001. And that should tighten that up really tight. And then we'll make the diffuse kind of a blue. Make it a little bit of a bright blue here, maybe. Fully saturated, lighter blue. Alright, I like that. And then we have the R2 shaders. We'll go back out of shader operators, back up to objects, and we'll attach them to these by through the tabs here. So if I go to the floor and click, and we'll go up to shading, we can go shader operator surface. Here's the third one down. If we go over here to the plus sign, it gives us the list that are in the shader operators, and we see our two things. And we'll click the floor one and accept, and that makes the floor darker. And then I'll select the SGI bug, same thing, go back to shading, shader operator surface, click on the plus, and we'll go bug blue, accept, and there it is. Got a nice looking little SGI bug here. Now let's light this guy. Maybe I'll scale the floor because I can see the trim here. So I'll go to the floor, transform, and I'll just scale it up a little bit more. And let's do a area light now, so I can show you this new area light. So we press tab, hit generator to go to light, and we drop a light here. Now that there's a light in the scene, it's trying to shade it with the light as the light source instead of just an overall ambient light like it had before. And we're going to, I think I've activated, so I had S, and if I hit Q and right click, or yeah, I just had that. Let's see here, I hit space bar and rotate. I grab this light item here, grab the light. Usually what you do is you'd hit enter to activate the gimbal, but you see here it creates a different gimbal here, and if you right click the item, or you Q right click, it creates a different gimbal. And I forget, let's see, is that, yeah, sorry, if you press S and right click, you get this other gimbal here, and it has all three of them together, like a rotate and a move at the same time. And that lets me move. Oh, it looks like I copied the light too. Yeah, let's see, I don't want this. I'll delete the first light. I definitely did something there with the Q and the S. I must have duplicated something there. But onwards, let's see if we grab this here in the node view, and there's our gimbal and the space bar, and maneuver our view around here so we can get the light above. And there's a pretty good spot for it. And you can see this is a kind of looks like a point light or a round light. So we're gonna go to shading while we have the light selected. And if I go down a ways, it says light type is point light. But if we go back up, you'll see here it says area shape, and it says none. And this is different than the 5.5 Houdini. We can go in here and press the none and go down to grid, and now you can see a traditional area light. And I'm going to go back to transform, because I want to rotate this. Point it. Let's see if we point it. Yeah. 90 degrees. And then I'm going to go back to shading and scale it up. Not using the scale, but the light scale. So it's at 1, so I'm going to put it at 4. Maybe that's too big. Let's put it back at 2.5 maybe. Yeah, that's pretty good. Maybe that'll create a good light. I'll make a light card a little bigger than that. And this will light pretty nicely, but it won't have a shadow. And what it used to do was you'd have this shader operator shadow you could put in here, but that's if you use a non-area light. The area light itself, you can go down here for shadow shader where it says no shadow, and we'll click that, and up here in the no shadow dialog you can pull it down, say fast shadow, all objects opaque, and I'm going to hit accept, and now we have a shadow that the area light is going to cast. And I will give that a test render, but before we do that, I'll show you we should set up mantra and a camera. So let's do the camera first. I'll move my items over here and my light over here on the right, and then I'm going to press tab, generate, go up to camera, drop the camera in, and here it is in the scene. Now I've been flying around a camera, but I need to fly this camera. Now I could move it like I do any of the other objects with the gimbal, but I want to fly it by looking through it. And the way you do that is you go down here to no camera and you click on cam 1 and it drops us in there. But if I move the view, you'll see that I did not move the camera. And I showed this in the other video, but I'll show you it again. And you can see down here it says no camera again. So we'll go back to cam 1, and this time to the right of that is this little thing that says lock camera to view. And now we can, it's basically a padlock so that your view stays the camera. And now I can animate, or I can, rotate the view, and it's actually pulling the camera along with me. And so this allows me to set what the camera sees through the camera lens. And that's easier to set up your shots by making sure you're looking through the lens to get the shot and the angle that you want. So I'll try to center this SGI bug real symmetrically here. Zoom out and see if I can get a nice angle of this so it looks a little bit symmetrical and uniform here. That's pretty good. And then I can go to no camera and leave the camera there, or turn off that lock, and we'll zoom away. You can see I left the camera there, so now I'm not damaging not moving the camera around, but it stays there. And well, let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that. We're gonna go to cam 1, and let's go over to the node view here where objects is, and let's go all the way down to the bottom, which is outputs, which is render operators, and we'll hit that, and it brings up kind of like the shader window, but this is the basically the render output. And if I hit tab here, we'll hit generators, and there's like Alfred, Amazon, you'll actually see RenderMan, Mental Ray. It's like this, they built Houdini to plug into all these different engines, and we're just going to use Mantra, which is its native render and has been, I think, forever. And I think I'll leave these default for now just so we can get a look at this. You see this thing here though, it says override default resolution is like 320 by 243. You can set the resolution there, but you normally would set up in the camera. So we'll go back out to the object level, hit the camera item, and we'll go to the view tab instead of the transform. You can see here, here's the resolution. I'll just leave it default for now, and then we'll save this as, let's see, go in here, go in my hip folder, and we'll call this SGI_bug _002, since I built another scene with that before. And let's just take a look at this render. And to do that, we'll go down here where the cam was at the bottom here, and on the very left you'll see this little cube with like a line through it, and this is basically showing you like this is rendering. If you right click it, you can see here you got Flipbook, Mantra, RenderMan, and then there's the Mantra one which we added, and I'm just going to let that launch, and we'll take a look at what we have. And I will stop the video and continue if it's going to be too slow, but let's see how fast it renders. Okay, there's our little cube. It's a little messy and chattery because I don't have a lot of samples on the shadow, but you can see there's a nice fall off here from the area light being spread above. And then I would give that, a standard light card behind the area light so that we would see it reflected and see the highlights as if you would light, if you were a practical set lighter and you're going to light any product, you're going to light a metal object you can point a light at it, but it's not going to just see the beam of light. The metal will only see the reflection, and so that's why in car lighting and product lighting you have these big lights that you would call chimera lights or chimera lights, and they're these big boxes like dome lights that have a sheet that the light is behind, and it's a big wide area so that the reflective part of the metal picks up the highlight and creates a directional lighting sense across the metal, since metal lights, anything reflective lights in a very different fashion than is something that is diffuse, and just a diffuse item can just pick up the light from any angle and you can see the direction of it. But a reflective item will need big light cards in order to put the highlights across them, which really makes it look shiny and nice. And we'll set that up and do another render that's high quality here. So we'll quit Mantra there, and so real quickly we'll generate another geo. This will be our light card. I'll dive into there, hit enter. All we have to do is tab primitive grid. I'll get rid of the file node, activate the grid, and we have this camera view here, but I don't have it locked, so I can back off of it here. Spacebar. We'll zoom out, left, middle, right, left, middle, right. And you can see our camera there, and there's our area light. And I'll probably make this a lot bigger than the area light so that we can see the highlight across the whole thing. And what do I need? The grid's bigger than that. The grid is bigger than, I want to make the grid bigger than the light. So I'll scale it up here. Press middle mouse on the size, and we'll just drag it to the right. And I'll try to scale it up pretty big, yeah. And then we'll go to the out of the surface operated objects, and I'll translate it here on the Y. So the middle, look at the translate, go past X, go to Y, and then right click, and we'll just drag right until it's above our light source there. And then we have to put a shader on it, so go to objects, down to shaders, the shader operator. Same thing, but I'll press tab, and with Vex standard I'm not going to use a super material, I'm going to use a constant, so VX constant, and it's ready to go as white. Let's call this light card. Go back out of shader operators to objects, and in our light card we'll go to the shading, shader operator service, click here, and there's our light card in the list, hit accept. And we should have a nice light card waiting to be reflected there. And in order to make this a high quality render, we're going to want to change the shaders on the light. So click the light here, and we want to go up to the samples. So if we go up here, it says sample 16, I'm going to make this like 64, make the shadows somewhat smooth. And in the camera, we'll make this a little big for our render here. So from 320, I'll go 640 by 360. That's pretty good. And let's save the scene. And I'll go down here to camera, and let's press cam 1. And maybe we'll zoom out. I'll click this here, and I want to get a little bit further away from that, so we can see the, you know, the film gate now that we've set the resolution. I'm going to hit the space bar, and let's see, middle mouse, drag it to the left, and just give us a little bit of space so our bug, we can see the shadow and a little bit of space around it here. Save that, and then we want to go to render. So I will start this render, right click down here on the lower left, and we'll hit Mantra 1, and it should start, and then I'll bring us back into the video once the render gets finished. Yeah, it's scaled it up there. It scaled the render up at 640 by 360. It's a 16:9 ratio, and it's going to be a little while drawing that up, and I will bring you back when it's finished. Okay, this is ready. Let's take a look at it. It looks pretty good. Let's pull this out. Let's see if I can zoom it in here. Doesn't zoom very well, but it gives you an idea here. Got a nice shiny SGI bug, although I could probably extend the card out, so it's a little bit cooler looking, but there you go. We got a nice area light and SGI bug lit in Houdini. And we'll move on to the next lesson. Got this saved, and we'll go to a new file. We'll start over here, and we're going to do a little modeling to create particle collisions. So let's get started here. Get over here in the node window, we'll create geometry. This will be a grid 01. We'll dive into that, hit enter, hit tab, primitive grid, and we'll hit the blue flag, and then we'll kill our file node, and I'll hit spacebar F to focus or zoom us in here. Oh, whoops, I used the Alt instead of the spacebar. If you use the Alt instead of the spacebar on your middle mouse, you will change the camera zoom. Use the spacebar, and let's modify this. Now, in order to model in Houdini, we want to be in the geometry here, the surface operator, and we're going to add a edit node. So I'm going to hit tab, hit E, and then it brings up stuff. Starting with E, there's edit. I'll connect the grid to the edit, turn it on, and now we can start selecting items. And what we'll do is we'll hit S. You can see here I can start selecting polygons. But what I want to do is select points. So we got to go up here on the left. We'll hit points. The other thing that we can do is we can turn on the points. You can see here if I turn the points on, all the little blue dots will show up. And I'm going to rotate the view here so I can grab the middle row. So stretch across here, click and drag. You got that row. Now if I did this right, let's see if I hit the right click. Now hit Q, then the right click, or no, hit enter. Yeah, this is tricky. Let's see if I can get this right here. Q, left drag. There it is. Now if I right click, there we go. There we go. There's our gimbal, and now I can drag that down. You see here we're modifying the points. And I'm going to do this with the next couple rows here. Oops, hit Q, drag across, spacebar over here, hit Shift, left click, drag across, right click, there's the gimbal again, and then I'll pull this down here. Hit Q, deselect. Okay, it's a cool little ramp. And then we will go into objects. There's our item. I can turn off this display here, up here. You can see if you turn these on, there's like the numbered verts. It doesn't have the normals on. There's some UV. There's some more information here. Primitive numbers. These are pretty neat to look through. Little display options. Okay, now we have that. I'm going to go to the grid and select. Hit S. And then I'm going to do Control C for copy, and then deselect and Control V. And we have another copy of the grid here. So it's the same item twice. And I'm going to move the first one, I'm going to move up and over. And then we'll rotate it like this. And then select the other one. And I'll move it like that. Let's see. If I hit M, let's see if I hit M. No, it's not changing the gimbal that way. Turn this down. Alright, so we're going to have particles land on this one, then hit this one, and then we'll put like, have them maybe land in a like a bowl. Okay, deselect, and then I'll hit tab, and we'll create generators, geo, enter to dive in there, tab, primitive, sphere, turn on the flag, And let's see. Oh yeah, we want to change this from NURBS because right now it's a NURB sphere. We want to change it to polygon. So we go up here to primitive type up here in the attribute area. Once we have the sphere node selected, and we'll go to mesh, and there's our sphere. Now down here I have this enabled. This is next to the grid here. It says see all or one objects, and from my previous usage it is set on the see all objects. So I'm going to deselect that, so I'm only looking at the sphere, so I don't see the other grids while I'm in the surface operator. And then I'm going to go over here and right click, and we'll go wireframe. Go hidden line wireframe, and then go up to wireframe. So refresh issue there. And the same thing, we're going to hit the S for selection, and I'm going to try to drag across a few of these. Let's see if I can get more than that. Okay, yeah. And then I want to right click. Let's see, enter. Yeah, I got the wrong one here. Q. Oh, what do I have here? This is still tricky. Enter, right? S. Yeah, this is the part that's tricky in Houdini, is trying to get this thing here. So I have Q for select, drag across, then right click. Oh geez, I'm doing something. Yes, I'm doing this again where I'm copying things. Not quite sure how I'm doing this. To bear with me here. Oh, because I don't have the edit. Okay, that's right. So let's see. Tab. Hit E. Plug the edit in. Turn on the flag. Okay, now we should be able to. That was what I did wrong. So if I select across here, right click. Enter. Nope. Q. Select across here. Right click. There we go. There's a little sequence there with the S and the Q. Edit. Now see, I've done, it's added 2, but totally don't understand fully why I'm able to activate it, and sometimes I can't, but here we are. So move this down, and let's see, can I hit the T for the move, R for the rotate, E for the scale. I'm going to do the scale. If you grab these outer arrows, it'll be uniform. If you grab this inner line, it'll scale non-uniformly. I'm going to just inverse this, and so that we are kind of making a bowl out of this. And then hit T, we'll scale, slide this down here, and also E, I'll just bring this inwards a little bit so it's like a bowl. And I'll do this back to smooth wireframe. And that's it. Okay, we'll go back to objects. There's our bowl, although I don't need it that big. Scale it down a little bit. And we'll move it downwards so that they end up in here. So this is where I'll drop our particles. Okay, so we have this little obstacle course here where we have the particles flow along this. And in order to create particles, we want to do, we'll create a geometry. See, this is our bowl here. Bowl. Enter, hit tab, create a geometry, and we'll call this one particles. Geo, okay, let's turn that. Particles, okay, now we'll dive into that, enter. And what we're looking for when we're in here, hit tab, and we'll go to generators, and there's a thing called the pop network. Bring that open here. And once you're here, now you can dive inside this thing. So now we're going even further down into particle operators, which is here. And now we're going to have to create a generator, which we're going to make a location. We can create a source that's from an object, like let's see, generators. Source like this could be, you could plug a shape here. You could make a primitive source like a sphere, and all the particles will come out of it. but we're just going to use the location, which is a singular point. So this is the thing that we need to start birthing particles, and then I'm going to hit tab and go down to forces, and we're going to do force, and this is like our gravity, and so the force will be, let's see, like -5 on the Y, so it's pulling down, and I'll pull this guy into here, and then I'll turn this on in the flags, and if we play now, you can see I have particles being born. And what we see here first is that they're jumping out really wide, so I want to change that so it's not quite birthing as wide. So we have to go to back to location, tab, go over to birth, and let's see here. The attributes, variance, yeah, on the attribute tab on the far right here, I'm going to do variance, and I'm going to middle mouse click, I'm going to pull it down till it's like 0.2, and now this width should slim up here. Rewind and press, there we go. So now I've got a little bit more of a solid stream of particles in the middle. Alright, and now if I went to, let's see here, I'll turn this on the bottom here and turn on, oh, we don't have all the CL objects in here. Alright, if I go out here, we go to objects, we can see it, and I want to move that item, so I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to move this location into the position I want, and it's updating pretty good. It's showing you, it's at frame 189 and showing you where it would be if I rewind, press play. Okay, there they are, but it's not colliding, and that's because we have to do that in the pop network. So let's go back in particles, enter, go back inside the pop net, enter. What we need here is a collision. So if I press tab inside of the particle operators, you have different options here. If we go, let's see, forces, no, generators, no, what is it? Filters? Yeah, filters, it's a collision. And I'll take the force down into the collision and turn it on. And what we have to do when we're selecting the collision is we go up here to the surface operator, and we'll press the plus, and we'll say which one do we want. We'll do grid 1 on the first one, accept. Okay, now it's showing this in the particle operator window, so if we press play, we can see they're colliding. They're dying. They're not going beyond that, and that's because of the behavior, which is the second tab. So we say behavior with collision is die on collision. We're not going to do that. We're going to do bounce on collision, and then it opens up some attributes here, and I'm going to bring down the gain normal, which is how much it bounces. Well, first I'll show you what it does at 1. So if I press play, it's bouncing a lot, and that's a little bit too far. I want it to bounce, but I want it to kind of slide off on this thing, so I'm going to take this gain normal down to like 0.3, and that should reduce the bounce by 2/3 here. There we go. Now that's sliding along. Then we need another one, so I'm going to take that collision. I'm going to go Control C, left click, deselect, and Control V. It gives us another collision, but I'm going to detach it from there, and we're going to move it below this collision and connect them. And we have to go up here to the we have, since we copied it, it has the same behavior as the one I copied. We'll just go back to the collision here, and I'll click on grid 1, and I'll hit grid 2. And there's the second one. So I'll rewind, press play. There we go. Now you see this interaction happening. And same thing with the next. We're going to do it one more time. Control C, Control V. And just connect that. And connect it to the bottom of collision 2. And we will have grid 2 will be switched for the bowl, except now we have all of our items here. Rewind, play. And there you go. And there's some particle dynamics in Houdini 6.5. It looks like I have the Some of these are falling through. This is probably an accuracy collision here. Let's see, drop back out to object level. And there's our particle simulation. Let's rewind and play. Well, I hope you had fun following along. That was just a little brief Houdini 6.5 tutorial showing off the area lights, little modeling functions, and some particle dynamics with collisions. Thanks for tuning in.